This video is sponsored by Ground News. Fake bomb threats throughout Europe at Moldovan embassies. Pro-Russian parties banned from running. And millions of euros poured into disinformation campaigns. Welcome to the parliamentary elections in Moldova, a tiny country of 2.4 million people, bordering Romania and Ukraine. And this might be the most important election in its modern history. Why? Because the result could decide whether the country keeps moving towards the European Union and backing Ukraine, or swings back into Russia's orbit. And the run-up to the vote has been super tense. Prime Minister Dorin Rechan even warned of Russian meddling. He went as far as calling the election the final battle for our country's future. And controversy has been everywhere. Remember last year's EU referendum? Moldovans narrowly voted in favor of joining the EU. But the vote was messy, with international observers reporting irregularities and opposition groups shouting fraud across the country. This year, it got even wilder. Several pro-Russian parties were banned from running. Among them were Victory Bloc, Heart of Moldova, and Moldova Mayor. Authorities accused them of secretly taking Russian money to try and destabilize the country. But critics, of course, say that this is just the government silencing opponents. So, that being said, who actually won? Did the pro-European side pull it off, or did the pro-Russians take over? Let's check the results, and to be honest, it wasn't even that close. First place, the Action and Solidarity Party, PAS, with almost 50% of the vote at the time of recording. That's the pro-EU center-right party, led by Igor Grosu and Maia Sandu, the current president of Moldova. They're linked to the European People's Party in the EU Parliament, basically the same family as Germany's CDU or Spain's Partido Popular. PAS has been running the country the last couple of years, and this was their chance to keep Moldova firmly on the EU track. In second place, the Patriotic Electoral Bloc, BEP, with around 25% of the vote. This is the left-wing pro-Russian alliance led by Igor Dodon, Moldova's former president and head of the Socialists. It also includes the Communists, the Future of Moldova party, and even the now banned Heart of Moldova. In third place, the Alternative Bloc, with around 6%, led by Ion Ceban. Now these guys are interesting. On paper, they're super pro-EU, but many analysts call them a Trojan horse. Why? Because their leaders have a history of being pro-Russian and anti-EU. Their whole thing is to attract pro-EU center-left Moldovans who don't love PAS's liberal policies, but still want Europe over Russia. In fourth place, our party, with around 6% of the vote. They're also pro-Russian, left-wing on economics, but quite conservative on social issues. And in fifth and sixth place, we have the PPDA party and the PSDE. Now, depending on what media outlet you follow, elections, especially ones as polarizing as this one, can be reported very differently, and sometimes with very different levels of factuality. For example, if we click here, we can see how left-leaning outlets covered the story, with a strong focus on Russian interference. Click here, and right-leaning outlets also mention Russian interference, but also put emphasis on economic issues and on the liberal centrist ruling party losing ground. And this is exactly where our sponsor, Ground News, really shines. Their platform lets you see how the same story is covered across the political spectrum, so you don't get stuck in a single perspective. For this particular story, Ground News pulled coverage from over 220 sources and summarized it all in one place. If you scroll down, you can see the factuality score for the story overall, or even for each individual article. All 225 of them are listed here, and you can even see the ownership of each different news outlet. The Ground News app and website are packed with tools like this, making it so much easier to cut through the noise and understand not just the story, but how and why it's being framed. So, if you want to give it a try, you can get unlimited access to the Vantage plan with 40% off using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on the screen. Alright, back to the video. So what do these results actually mean for Moldova's new parliament? Well, the country has 101 seats in total, and the rules for getting them are strict. A single party needs at least 5% of the vote, blocs need 7%, and if you're brave enough to run as an independent, you could scrape in with just 2%. With those rules in play, the pro-European PAS ended up with 54 seats. The pro-Russian BEP alliance secured 27 seats. The Alternative Bloc, who claim they are pro-EU, grabbed 8. And finally, our party and PPDA made it in with 6 seats each. The result, PAS is the largest party in the parliament and has a majority of 54 seats out of 101. This means that Maya Sandu's party will not have to form a coalition with other parties. Now, for Moldova's pro-European ambitions, this is incredibly good news, as right now, Moldova's entire political system is lined up behind the EU. The president is pro-European, the parliament is controlled by a pro-European majority. The government will be formed by PAS, and the prime minister will also come from PAS. And there was the referendum last year, which showed clear public support for EU membership. Of course, not everyone is happy. The pro-Russian parties have already announced protests, starting on Monday. They may challenge the results or even refuse to recognize the new parliament. But with PAS holding a majority, it will be very difficult for them to block Moldova's EU course. So, with such good news for pro-EU factions, let's have a deeper look at how Moldova's EU membership bid is actually going. To join the EU, you need to go through 6 phases. First application process, then assessment, then you become a candidate country, after that come negotiations, and finally ratification. Only then do you become a member of the European Union. And trust me, it's a lot harder than it sounds. Moldova formally applied to join on the 3rd of March in 2022. That decision came right after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and after Belarus's Lukashenko accidentally leaked invasion plans on TV that even showed Moldova as a target. Yes, that actually happened. Things started off quickly. The EU completed its assessment within months, and by June 2022, Moldova, together with Ukraine, was granted candidate status. Yay! But then, things slowed down drastically. It took almost 3 years until the 22nd of September 2025 for the European Commission to confirm that Moldova had completed its initial screening process. That's basically the homework stage before real negotiations can even begin. And negotiations, that's pretty much the hardest part. Moldova needs to align with 35 chapters of EU law. Each one has to be opened, negotiated, and closed, one by one. And every single EU country has to agree unanimously before each chapter can be closed. In other words, Moldova's accession process is still right at the starting line. And to be honest, as you can see in this overview, so are most other candidate countries. The furthest one along is Montenegro, and on the other end of the scale, you've got Kosovo, which is only at the application stage, and Turkey, whose membership bid has been frozen for years. So why is it taking Moldova so long? First, politics inside of the EU. Member states need to agree unanimously at most steps of the process, and not everyone is in a rush to enlarge. Some governments worry about importing instability, and others about giving too much power to small states. Second, there's Moldova itself. The country has made reforms, especially under President Maya Sandu, but corruption, weak institutions, and the influence of oligarchs remain a big concern for Brussels. And third, the wider geopolitical context. You see, Russia still has troops stationed in Transnistria, the breakaway region inside of Moldova. That frozen conflict makes EU governments nervous about letting Moldova in too quickly. Here's what I think. This is a huge result, not just for Moldova, but for the European Union as well. I'm genuinely excited to see Moldova's accession process finally move forward again. Moldova really has delivered, and now it's time for the EU to deliver too. Give Moldovans a real perspective, a real path to joining the Union. Because if Brussels hesitates, this could easily turn into another sad story, like what happened with Georgia. And if full membership isn't realistic straight away, then let's be honest about it. We need a phased approach, access to the single market, integration into the customs union, even cooperation in a defense union. We simply cannot afford 4 years of standstill, because if there's no visible progress, the political mood in Moldova could change very quickly. And that's why I believe a tiered EU is the answer. And Moldova could join that outer tier right now. We've made an entire video about this idea, so check it out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to dig deeper into media bias and understand how stories are being framed, check out our sponsor, Ground News. You can get the unlimited Access Vantage plan with 40% off by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. Thank you to our presidents, Jan Schalke Christian Peter HEVD, Daniel Unite Europe, Stefan and Kiki Loxen. See you in the next video.